2-2.
Hey, 1-1-1. 1-1-2. Ses var. Ses test. Hey. Bir ses test. Bir. Hey.
Раз, 2, 3.
Hey, bir. Bir. Bir.
Mi Parlamento, mi planeta. Soy Ana Lilia Rivera, presidenta del Senado de la República Mexicana y hoy participante en esta cumbre interparlamentaria en Naciones Unidas. El año pasado sufrimos las temperaturas más altas registradas, una sequía que no veíamos en 50 años. Pero también, por otro lado, en las zonas cercanas al mar, las tormentas y los huracanes se hicieron mucho más violentos que otros años. En los lugares donde hemos padecido escasez de agua por las lluvias, hoy fueron como nunca más aisladas. Indudablemente, el cambio climático presente hoy en nuestro país pone en riesgo antes que nada la soberanía alimentaria de nuestra nación, nuestra seguridad al agua potable, pero también la vida de todas las especies que en este planeta vivimos del agua. En México, desde hace algunos años, hemos empezado a caminar con una conciencia que nos permite llevar a las leyes la protección de nuestros ríos, de nuestros lagos, de nuestros océanos, de las reservas que necesitamos declarar, de zonas que no pueden ser impactadas por el desarrollo humano, pero también hemos impulsado presupuestos, leyes, programas para proteger, preservar y lograr la reproducción de árboles. Hemos creado un programa a través del gobierno actual que se llama Sembrando Vida. En este momento sido ejemplo mundial al sembrar 1 millón de árboles. Tenemos que en la Constitución salvaguardar la vida de nuestros bosques y de estos maravillosos seres que nos han dado oxígeno y han permitido la vida, la humedad en nuestras tierras. Estamos construyendo nuevos programas con un nuevo modelo de agricultura, estamos impulsando con los grupos campesinos de nuestro país y de pueblos indígenas que los conocimientos ancestrales sean base de nuestra nueva agricultura. Y esto también es innovador para los mexicanos. Estamos impulsando programas como nunca para retención de agua en barrancas, en jagüeyes, y estamos a punto de aprobar una nueva ley de agua nacional que reconozca a nuestro gran elemento agua como un derecho humano, vital para el consumo humano, y que se considere con rango de ley constitucional también el tratamiento de aguas residuales. Estamos impulsando leyes para prohibir los plásticos, estamos haciendo un gran esfuerzo de campañas que están llegando a nuestros programas y libros escolares, que en México tenemos libros de texto gratuito con hoy contenidos que ayudan a que los niños empiecen a crear una conciencia de protección al medio ambiente. Estamos en camino, pero estamos actuando. Y lo más importante, el gobierno está tomando con programas y presupuestos el gran control del agua para poder generar sustentabilidad a las grandes ciudades y al campo.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our session 6 dedicated to efforts to safeguard health and food security in the face of changing climate. And the moderator of this session is Mr. Chris Lowe, member of the Parliament of the United Kingdom. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, parliamentarians and guests. And I hope I have your attention, not least because you've just had your lunch, and I hope you had a coffee to follow up. This afternoon we have session 6, which is the efforts to safeguard health and food security in the face of a changing climate. And I'm joined here with 3 fantastic guests who will each be given their perspectives so that we can learn as parliamentarians and guests not only of the crisis we have today, but also how we move forward in the weeks and months in our parliaments and elsewhere as we tackle the main challenges. The 3 guests I have today, one is Mr. Martin Frick, who's to my left, who's the director of the World Food Programme, who's based in Berlin and has more than 20 years of experience in the areas of climate and food security. His background includes central roles in advancing the Paris Climate Agreement as director of the UNFCCC Secretariat and championing climate justice, as chief of the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, and later as a program director of the Kofi Annan Foundation. I also delighted to introduce our 2 other guests, which is Ms. Irene Moreira, who's a member of the Senate in Uruguay, which I had the privilege to visit our parliament last year, and Ms. Parvana Valieva, who is a member of the Milli Majlis, Azerbaijan, who I've just learned in the last half hour is 2 months old as a parliamentarian, so I'm quite excited to hear from both of them as well. But I will first of all ask Mr. Martin Frick to give us his perspective on the challenges we face to global health and food security with the rising temperatures, extreme weather events and environmental shifts impacting food production and increasing malnutrition. Over to you, Martin. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, that you take the time to listen to this important topic. I don't want to be alarmist, but I am. 5 years ago, we had a situation in which chronically we had about 700 to 800 million people being in food insecurity, but we had 135 million people who were in acute food security. To put it in simple terms, people who simply don't know where their next meal is coming from, people who drop meals in order to give something to their children, people who actually need help. And that's what the World Food Programme does. 135 million 5 years ago. Today, if you look at the numbers, it's 320 million. We have almost tripled the number of acutely food insecure people. And that is staggering and that is shocking. Because if you look at the bigger picture, ever since the Second World War, hunger numbers have been going down. We had a situation in which the world population was sharply rising but the number of hungry people in absolute terms, not in percentages, in absolute numbers, were going down all the time until 2015. So you basically had 70 years of a success story, and now the tide is turning. Ever since 2015, we first have seen stagnation. Now we see how the hunger numbers are constantly going up. What's the reason for that? I would put it in 3 C's. It's conflict, and you all read the newspapers, you all see the news. We have more wars on this planet than we had ever before. CIPRI recently brought out the annual report, and it says that we have 59 live conflicts today. 59. Conflicts are not only impacting the people who are suffering under these conflicts. We have seen situations in which conflicts are sending shockwaves through the entire world. The Ukraine war is such a conflict. We have seen how overnight the 5th largest grain exporter has basically been going offline. And and that has sent price shocks all over the planet. We have seen in places as remote as South Africa or in Latin America how the costs have been soaring as a consequence of the Ukraine war. But even before that, with COVID, we have seen how supply chains are interrupted, how prices are going up, and this has been going on. If you're looking at the developing countries today, the least developed countries of this planet, the countries that have the biggest social problems, are paying $800 billion a year in interest, not in paying back debts. So obviously, this is crippling economies. What does it do? It actually is a cause of soaring inflation rates in many countries of the world. And I see many of you nodding because you see exactly how that feels. If you're in public service, if you're a doctor, a nurse, a teacher, with the same salary and inflation going up, this might be pushing your family into hunger and into poverty. We have seen also the loss of value of local currency as opposed to the US dollar as the main currency in global trade. So you need to put more of your own currency on the table in order to buy staple foods from the global market. And on top of it all, you still have constant 20-25% higher costs for staple foods on the global market. So we have conflict, we have the wars, and every war is a war too many. We have costs, and that's particularly a consequence of both, of the COVID pandemic, of the wars, and of a price level that is simply too high for many people. And then the third one is, of course, climate change. And it's breathtaking in a bad way how fast the impacts of climate change are over us. I'm looking into climate change professionally in many different incarnations since 2007. And I have seen the predictions that science gave us in 2007-8 for 2030, for 2035, even for 2040. Some of them are a reality today. If anything, we underestimated the impact climate change will be having. So for now, we are still in a situation in which we can say there is enough food for everyone. Actually, we could feed 10 billion people today. 10 billion. People are afraid of 10 billion. You know, pressure groups would tell you we have to increase production because we will never be able to feed 10 billion people. But we are already today. As it stands, we have a distribution problem. In rich countries, less than 20% of the grain that is being produced ends up on a table for a human being for consumption. The lion's share goes into fodder to produce meat, milk, eggs, and so on, and a big share of it goes into biofuel. Now, I'm not arguing from any sort of ideological standpoint. I'm always saying I'm a meat eater myself, I drink milk, I'm not preaching to you, but I'm saying what we need to consider is what's the general picture? How much consumption is sustainable? And we need to particularly look into the quality of the consumption. The quality is decisive because food as a system is the biggest employer on the planet. And unfortunately, it's the provider of the worst job of the planet. If you look at migrant workers, if you look at people at the bottom of the pyramid, they are fruit pickers. They cross borders in order to work in agriculture. They work in slaughterhouses under horrible conditions. So there is an issue that we need to address too. So I have been giving you a sober assessment, and of course, on the topic of this session, the health impacts. We always need to emphasize, and I'm saying that at every occasion, that hunger is a terrible problem. Hunger is maybe the worst form of suffering for human beings, but less visible is a crisis in nutrition. We need to bring not only calories to the table, we need to bring nutritious food to the table. And this is of utmost importance, particularly for children, and particularly for children in least developed countries. Sub-Saharan Africa, we have still situations in which children are stunted or even wasted because they do not have access to enough protein. They do not have access to enough vitamins and minerals. So where are we leading with this? We have a hunger crisis, we have a nutrition crisis. Actually, we also have a nutrition crisis in rich countries. Look at the levels of obesity. Look at the levels of people who are suffering from non-communicable diseases, heart attacks, diabetes, even with children. What I'm aiming at, and I don't want to be Dr. Gloom, I want to give you a perspective, is we need to have transformation of our food systems. And that is an interesting and inspiring point. First, food is the most basic human need. It is also something incredibly emotional, and it has a lot to do with you as a personality. All of us remember the apple pie that our grandmother did, or our favorites food from childhood, or creating food with children in the kitchen. If you're talking to somebody from another culture, inevitably you speak about food. You know, if you're here, you have a fantastic cuisine in Azerbaijan. If you ask, people would be taking pride in explaining you all the wonderful meals that they are having. What we need is much more attention being paid to food systems. That means diversifying our food systems and localizing our food system. I give you one number, I don't want to bore you with too many numbers, but more than 60% of the world's calories, what the world eats, more than 60% are three staple crops. It's rice, it's wheat, and it's maize or corn, as you would say if you're American. That is so single-minded in terms of nutrition, but it's also a big problem because that standardized food industry is responsible for large monocultures that require large amounts of pesticides and fertilizers. You need smaller scale agricultural production, you need a bigger diversity. You need to mix systems, forestry and agriculture, systems that, you know, for example, are particularly successful if you go to the Sahelian countries or to the world's drylands. Because when you have little precipitation, trees help you to keep the humidity. Trees provide you with shadow, and you can grow food in the shadow of that. Now let me conclude by saying the food systems as they currently are having many problems. I mentioned the social problems, I mentioned health problems, but let us not forget that a good third of all of the world's greenhouse emissions are related to our food systems. So I think it's fair to say food is a third of our problem. But if we flip our food systems around, if we do agriculture in a way that builds up natural capital, that grows soils, that brings back biodiversity, which is totally possible, we might be looking as much as 40% of the solution. So food is a problem, but food is also our fastest solution, and maybe the solution that brings positive change to the biggest group that we so often neglect, which is the poorest people and the smallholder farmers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. And that was really illuminating, quite a lot to take away from there. I had no idea that in the last 5 years it's almost tripled the number of people in hunger. But there is a solution, there is food for everyone, and the need to diversify is coming across as very key. So thank you for that. Next we'll hear from our parliamentary panelists who bring really important perspectives on addressing these complex challenges with their own national context. So firstly, we have Ms. Irene Moreira. I hope I've got that correct for you. Member of the Senate of Uruguay. Ms. Moreira, please speak. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, señor moderador, excelentísimos integrantes de esta mesa, señoras y señores. Es un honor dirigirme a ustedes hoy para hablar de un tema que nos afecta a todos. Se trata de un desafío crítico y de gran relevancia global como para preservar la salud y la seguridad alimentaria en un contexto de cambio climático creciente. Esta cuestión abarca múltiples dimensiones, desde los impactos directos del clima a la salud humana hasta los efectos devastadores en la producción de alimentos. Es fundamental que analicemos no solo los problemas, sino también las estrategias para enfrentarlos de manera eficaz y coordinada. Para comenzar, el cambio climático tiene consecuencias directas e indirectas en la salud de las personas. Los eventos climáticos extremos, como olas de calor, sequías e inundaciones, no solo afectan las infraestructuras y los ecosistemas, sino también la salud pública. Las olas de calor, por ejemplo, aumentan la mortalidad, especialmente entre las poblaciones más vulnerables, como los ancianos y los niños. Las inundaciones y las sequías, por otro lado, pueden propiciar la propagación de enfermedades infecciosas y afectan el suministro de agua potable. En términos de seguridad alimentaria, el cambio climático impacta en la producción de alimentos, llevando a cosechas reducidas y a un menor acceso a productos nutritivos. Este problema se exacerba en las regiones que ya sufren de nutrición y falta de recursos, empeorando la malnutrición y generando un ciclo de pobreza y enfermedad. El cambio climático no solo afecta la disponibilidad de alimentos, sino también su calidad y accesibilidad. La disminución de la productividad agropecuaria y pesquera está ligada a fenómenos como la acidificación de los océanos, que perjudica la pesca, y la alteración de las temporadas de cultivo por cambios en las temperaturas y precipitaciones. Estas perturbaciones contribuyen a la inseguridad alimentaria y, por ende, a la malnutrición, lo que tiene efectos negativos en la salud física y cognitiva de las personas, especialmente en las etapas de desarrollo infantil. Uruguay es particularmente vulnerable a ciertos impactos del cambio climático, como las variaciones en los patrones de precipitaciones, el aumento de las temperaturas y la incidencia de eventos climáticos extremos. Estos fenómenos pueden dañar cultivos y pasturas, reduciendo la disponibilidad de alimentos y provocando un aumento en los costos de producción. Las pérdidas en las cosechas, particularmente en zonas productivas de alimentos claves como son los cultivos de arroz, trigo, maíz, soja, generan escasez de alimentos y lo que es peor, aumenta la presión sobre los precios, afectando a las familias más vulnerables. No podemos dejar de mencionar también a los trabajadores agropecuarios, quienes son los más expuestos en estos fenómenos. Las inundaciones y las alteraciones climáticas no solo afectan su fuente de trabajo, sino que también agravan las condiciones de trabajo, ya que en muchos casos se enfrentan a jornadas más largas, condiciones de trabajo más difíciles y menos accesos a recursos para adaptarse a estos cambios. En el 2022 y 2023, nuestro país padeció la sequía más grave en un siglo, que generó grandes pérdidas al sector agropecuario. Muchos de nuestros productores están luchando por adaptarse a estos nuevos desafíos, lo que requiere tanto apoyo técnico como políticas públicas que los respalden. Uruguay ha avanzado en la creación de un marco legal y político que aborde justamente estos retos. Un ejemplo importante es la Ley 18.610, conocida como la Ley de Política Nacional de Cambio Climático, que establece una hoja de ruta para la adaptación y mitigación del cambio climático. Esta ley busca fortalecer la resiliencia del país y garantizar un desarrollo sostenible que considere tanto los aspectos ambientales como los sociales y económicos. Además, Uruguay ha trabajado en iniciativas como el Plan Nacional de Adaptación al Cambio Climático para el sector agropecuario. Este plan busca apoyar a los productores con herramientas y estrategias que les permitan adaptarse a las condiciones cambiantes, asegurando la productividad y sostenibilidad de sus actividades. Se incluyen medidas para mejorar la gestión del agua, de los suelos, elementos cruciales en un contexto de variabilidad climática. Como dijimos, el cambio climático tiene implicaciones directas sobre la salud en el Uruguay. Las temperaturas más altas pueden exacerbar problemas como el ya mencionado golpe de calor y las enfermedades transmitidas por vectores, como el caso del dengue. La legislación y las políticas públicas uruguayas reconocen esta relación y por ello promueven un enfoque integral que incluye medidas preventivas y de respuesta rápida. Por ejemplo, el Ministerio de Salud Pública trabaja en programas de vigilancia y prevención para minimizar los impactos de las enfermedades climáticamente sensibles. En cuanto a la seguridad alimentaria, Uruguay ha impulsado programas que buscan garantizar la disponibilidad de alimentos, especialmente para las comunidades más vulnerables. El Plan Nacional de Soberanía y Seguridad Alimentaria y Nutricional es un ejemplo de cómo se busca proteger el derecho a una alimentación adecuada en el contexto de un clima cambiante. Este plan promueve el acceso de alimentos nutritivos y seguros y fomenta prácticas de producción sostenible. El Parlamento uruguayo juega un papel fundamental en la aprobación y supervisión de leyes y políticas que aborden la intersección entre la salud, la seguridad alimentaria y el cambio climático. Los legisladores tenemos la responsabilidad de seguir fortaleciendo el marco normativo, promoviendo iniciativas que incentiven la producción agroecológica y fomenten la innovación tecnológica en el sector agrícola y pesquero. Es esencial que se trabaje en colaboración con otros actores, como el sector privado y la academia, para desarrollar soluciones integradas y basadas en evidencias. Las políticas deben enfocarse en reducir la vulnerabilidad de los sistemas de producción y en garantizar que los alimentos lleguen a todas las personas en condiciones de calidad y seguridad. En el sector agropecuario, una de las prioridades legislativas debería ser el impulso a técnicas de agricultura de conservación y la adopción de prácticas más sostenibles que permitan un uso más eficiente del agua y los recursos naturales. Por ejemplo, la promoción de sistemas de riego inteligente, y el manejo integrado de suelo puede ayudar a mitigar los impactos de las sequías y las inundaciones. En el ámbito pesquero, es fundamental fortalecer la legislación que regule las prácticas de pesca sostenible, proteger los ecosistemas acuáticos y combatir la sobreexplotación de recursos, iniciativa de apoyo y capacitación a los pescadores para adoptar métodos sostenibles, pueden contribuir significativamente a reducir las pérdidas y garantizar una fuente de ingresos estable. Para concluir, el cambio climático representa un desafío complejo y de múltiples dimensiones para Uruguay. La salud de las personas y la seguridad alimentaria están intrínsecamente conectadas a la capacidad del país para adaptarse y responder a estos cambios. Por lo tanto, es crucial seguir trabajando desde el Parlamento y las instituciones para reforzar el marco legislativo, fomentar la cooperación y garantizar un futuro resiliente y sostenible. Es esencial que reconozcamos la importancia de actuar frente al cambio climático de manera urgente. Necesitamos políticas que promuevan la resiliencia de nuestras comunidades, especialmente de aquellos que dependen directamente de la tierra para su sustento. Esto incluye no solo acciones para mitigar los efectos del cambio climático, sino también medidas concretas para proteger la salud pública, mejorar la infraestructura agrícola y garantizar la seguridad alimentaria para todos. Uruguay, como país productor de alimentos, tiene la responsabilidad de ser un líder en la adaptación de estos cambios, protegiendo tanto a su gente como al medio ambiente para garantizar un futuro próspero y sostenible para las generaciones venideras. Les agradezco a todos la atención prestada.
Thank you, Ms. Moreira, for sharing your valuable perspectives on addressing food security and health in the context of climate change, and in particular, the challenges that you face, both droughts and flooding in Uruguay in the last couple of years, and how you are facing up to the challenges and how you're adapting to the changes going forward. So thank you also for that national perspective and how to be constructive in adapting in the future. Thank you. My final and esteemed colleague is a parliamentarian, who came from Scotland, but from here at the Parliament in Azerbaijan, is Ms. Parvana Valieva, and I'm looking forward to your thought-provoking contributions. Please take the floor. Thank you.
I wanted to greet you from here. First of all, I would like to thank to Mr. Moderator and also previous speakers. And also I would like to deliver my special thanks to IPU, head of IPU, as well as Secretary General and our speaker of Milli Majlis to organize such a good event for parliamentarians. Dear parliamentarians, dear distinguished guests, it is my pleasure and privilege to welcoming you all to COP29 to Baku, Azerbaijan. In these days, all eyes on our beautiful city, Baku, Azerbaijan. World is gathering in Baku to discuss the fate of humanity and the future of our planet. There are some global threats that knows no borders. For example, environmental damage, climate change, cyber security threat, and health threats, pandemic risks. There is no borders in transmission of pandemics. Climate change not only damage to environment, but also to our health and health systems. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change warns that the global warming should be limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius, and when we limit it, we can save millions of lives. However, minor increase in temperature can have catastrophic consequences for our well-being. Climate change is already affecting our health by leading to deaths and illnesses from severe weather conditions, extreme heat waves, storms and floods that increases vector-borne diseases, cardiovascular diseases, mental health issues, and changes in profiles of pathogens that lead to antimicrobial resistance and so on. And the spread of vectors such as mosquitoes and ticks create and scale up diseases such as malaria, dengue fever, Lyme disease, Zika virus. And warm temperatures create better conditions for these bacteria and viruses to thrive. Disease burden scaling up. These climate-sensitive health issues are disproportionately felt by the most affected vulnerable populations, such as women and children, elderly people, people with disadvantages, migrants, refugees, IDPs, and so on. In this regard, it is very important to prepare health systems, our health system, to strengthen our health systems and workforce, to be ready to the impact of climate change health-related challenges. When we are talking about finance at COP29, we should also focus on that it is very important to finance health systems as well. Funding should be allocated also to pandemic preparedness, response, and prevention. We had a bad experience with pandemic a year and a half ago with COVID-19 pandemic. As you know, nobody and nor a country was ready for such a pandemic that transmits so quickly and continuously mutated. So it was bad experience, but lessons learned. A virus, so taking this experience, being ready for pandemics should be a part of our mitigation programs, mitigation plans. We should be ready to increase the beds. We make sure that we have enough beds, hospitals, workforce, healthcare work providers, and laboratories. Otherwise, we will need more money for loss and damage and healthcare services. In other words, prevention is better than cure. We talked about artificial intelligence, AI, in previous session. My colleagues talked about, yes, we are in the 21st century, and why we should not be empowered by the latest technological achievements and innovations such as AI while fighting this climate crisis, health crisis, because climate change is a health threat. And health is a fundamental human right. It is not a luxury, not a privilege, but a basic human right. To achieve health security, clean air and water security are vice versa important. Azerbaijan, my country, has severe problem with pollution of transboundary water courses, transboundary rivers. Plenty of mining industrial facilities in Armenia are located near to transboundary river basins in borders which directly discharge highly chemical toxic materials to transboundary rivers, mainly our Kur and Araz rivers, the longest rivers in the country, and they are transboundary. It causes public health issues, increases cancer cases, and it also damage to agriculture. When they use these damaged highly chemical toxic materials riversides from Araz river's water for irrigation purposes. As a signatory to UN ESPO Convention, Aarhus Convention, as well as Transboundary Rivers Convention, Armenia is obliged to consult with neighboring countries to get a consent when their activities have a transboundary impact. But up to date, Azerbaijani side didn't see it And again, not participating at COP29, it means to avoid from the implementation of their commitments and their added value to negotiations. Azerbaijan defined their own sustainable development goals. Azerbaijan 2030, national priorities for social economic development. We have priorities and goals defined in these SDGs, including green growth, healthy lifestyles of citizens of Azerbaijan. And we have 14 COP29 initiatives proposed during COP29. One of them is investing in human capital, education, and health. By the way, tomorrow is Health Day at the COP29, and we will see plenty of events, meetings around health. We can see more global health actors in this venue. So investing in human capital, health, and jobs for climate resilience future is one of the COP29 initiatives, which ensures investment in education, skills, and health and well-being. The third Global Oral Health and Climate Action Conference starts tomorrow. We are all aware that climate change conferences has increasingly addressed the urgent need to health challenges, demonstrated through the health-focused outcomes from COP27, COP26, and COP28, and namely establishment of Alliance for Transformative Action for Climate and Health, ATACH, for building climate resilience as well as low-carbon, sustainable health systems. Taking into account the importance of health in climate change agenda, Azerbaijan declared its co-convener for 2 years to ATACH for 2024-2026. Azerbaijan invites all countries to join this alliance to facilitate our mutual efforts in building climate resilient future. In 2023, Azerbaijan also initiated establishment of new 2 regional cooperation tracks within the framework of UN Special Program for Economies of Central Asia and Azerbaijan, SPECA. And our 3 cities are participating in WHO Healthy Cities program. Azerbaijan is malaria-free country. We got certificated last year as a malaria-free country, and our health system is affordable, accessible, and qualified for our residents after application of state health insurance system in our country. As parliamentarians, what we can do to accelerate climate action and what we can do to address the climate change related health issues, health challenges. Well, we can include innovative, accessible, affordable, and people-centered health services into our legislations, our laws. As parliamentarians, we also represent some group of people at the parliaments. We represent their interests and their needs and challenges. We represent also climate vulnerable groups, populations in our parliaments. So we are voice of them. And we can propose new laws to have more educated people, more educated healthcare providers that have climate change, environmental protection, knowledges as well as health. Also, we have a unique opportunity to propose to advocate to increase health budgets in our countries, national level, mostly to increase preventive measures in our countries. Also, as parliamentarians, we can support each other in international platforms with our advocacy. For example, advocating for to stop pollution of transboundary rivers. And we can strengthen our parliamentary diplomacy in climate change. Because pollution in one place is not limited. It has also cross-border implications. We have common atmosphere. We have common planet. So we should protect our planet together. And as our role as COP29 presidency provides an important opportunity to engage with parliamentarians as well to advance climate action for the benefit of our planet. Thank you for your attention. I will stop there and let's discuss together again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Valieva, for such an inspiring speech, and also some of the context within Azerbaijan, and most of all for reminding us as parliamentarians from all over the world that we're so interconnected. I think you used the language at the beginning is, when it comes to climate, like many other things, there are no borders. And you reminded us very clearly about the issues of disease, malaria, Zika virus, and of course, all of us in this room have been affected in one way or other by the impact of COVID, and the chances of the impact of climate with regards to disease and how that will increase. So I really appreciate comments. I'm sure everyone in this room has appreciated that also. And I'd also like to thank our other two panelists. And a round of applause, please, for our panelists, first of all, before I open it to the floor. Thank you very much. Now we invite delegates to share their perspectives on how climate change is affecting health and food security in their countries and region. What I would ask is please introduce yourself before speaking and keep remarks to a maximum of 2 minutes. I have a short list here, so you'll hear your name in just a second. So to start with, I'd like to invite Mr. Habib Douagoui. I hope I got that right, from Algeria. Please, if you speak, if you get the microphone. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Mesdames et Messieurs, honorables assistants, je suis le professeur Douagui, président de la Commission de la Santé, du Travail et des Affaires sociales dans mon pays, l'Algérie. Je voudrais vous transmettre les salutations amicales de Monsieur Salah Goudjil, le président du Sénat algérien. Monsieur le Président, les changements climatiques en Afrique constituent une menace majeure pour la santé et la sécurité alimentaire en raison de leurs effets sur les écosystèmes, la disponibilité des ressources alimentaires et la propagation des maladies. Monsieur le Président, je souhaite qu'on réfléchisse sur quelques chiffres qui méritent notre attention. Lors de la pandémie de la Covid-2019, seulement 8% des Africains ont été vaccinés, alors que plus de 80% des Occidentaux ont bénéficié de cette vaccination, ce qui a fait dire à Monsieur le directeur de l'Organisation mondiale de la santé qu'il s'agissait d'un échec moral catastrophique de l'iniquité vaccinale. De plus, Monsieur le Président, l'Afrique importe plus de 99% des vaccins. Deuxième chiffre, l'Afrique n'est responsable que de 4% des émissions de gaz à effet de serre, contre plus de 96% pour les pays industrialisés. La responsabilité des pays industrialisés pour la problématique du développement durable est clairement établie. Pour rétablir ces injustices, nous proposons, l'Algérie propose deux mesures qui doivent être soutenues par les pays pollueurs que sont les pays développés. Premièrement, la création et le soutien à la création d'une agence africaine pour les vaccins. Ce n'est plus possible aujourd'hui, sur le plan humanitaire et sur le plan moral, que les pays occidentaux empêchent les pays africains et les enfants de se faire vacciner. Deuxièmement, le soutien de l'Agence africaine de prévention des risques climatiques, créée en septembre dernier, et lui mettre en place un système de veille sanitaire avec l'intelligence artificielle par un partenariat Nord-Sud obligatoire sur le plan moral. Ces deux agences, Monsieur le Président, permettront de coordonner les efforts pour atténuer les impacts du changement climatique, protéger les populations vulnérables et garantir un développement durable. Je souhaite l'avis du panel. Je vous remercie pour votre bienveillante attention.
Thank you, Mr. Habib Douagui, and thank you for your valuable contributions. I'll make a very small comment because I know we've got a short time, but recently I visited Afrigen, which is in South Africa, which is looking at the hub to create vaccines for COVID because of the very problem of most of it being vaccinated in the north, but in the global south losing out. So I appreciate you raising that point. I know we don't have time just now to go comments because I've got 4 other speakers. I think we're pressed for time. So the second speaker is Mr. Issa Tijabir from Chad. If you can make yourself available, thank you very much.
Merci, monsieur le modérateur. Merci les panélistes. Moi, c'est Issa Mardo Djabir, parlementaire du Tchad, mais aussi du réseau des parlementaires africains sur les changements climatiques. Et par ailleurs, membre du comité parlementaire régional pour le bassin du lac Tchad. Je suis content qu'on a parlé du Sahel ici. Et comme vous le savez, le Tchad, pays sahélien confronté à des conditions climatiques extrêmes, est particulièrement vulnérable aux effets du changement climatique. Et la rupture écologique a entraîné un déséquilibre socio-économique, culturel et anthropologique. Ça en était suivi la destruction, voire l'extinction de certaines espèces florales et animales, et donc ce qui a conduit à l'insécurité alimentaire, sanitaire et nutritionnelle. Et donc, je voudrais juste rappeler que le Tchad subit aujourd'hui l'arrivée massive des réfugiés venant du Soudan, mais aussi de la Libye, mais également des déplacements internes, mais aussi des inondations, comme vous le savez, des inondations qui ont occasionné des pertes énormes en vies humaines, en bétail, des inondations qui ont conduit aussi à la destruction des champs, ce qui amène aujourd'hui les paysans à franchement détourner les pouces et de voir à quel sein se vouer. Et il y a une situation emblématique du lac Tchad aujourd'hui qu'on connaît, qui a perdu une grande partie de sa capacité et dont environ 2 millions de riverains, donc les pays voisins, le Niger, le Nigeria, le Cameroun et le Tchad même, 2 millions de riverains qui sont en train aujourd'hui d'errer et qui n'ont même pas les capacités de subvenir à leurs besoins. Et donc c'est dans ces conditions-là que le Tchad développe des stratégies pour la sécurité alimentaire, notamment l'agriculture résiliente, avec des variétés qui résistent à la chaleur et des techniques durables. Il y a aussi la gestion durable des ressources en eau, qui est une denrée rare, mais également le soutien aux petits exploitants agricoles en assistance technique notamment. Et dans le domaine de la santé, comme vous le savez, il y a le renforcement du système sanitaire du Tchad qui aujourd'hui subit aussi une situation assez difficile. Il y a la sensibilisation et l'éducation des communautés par rapport aux effets des changements climatiques. Mais il y a un aspect important ici qu'on n'a pas relevé, c'est l'accès à l'eau potable et à l'assainissement. Et c'est ce qui peut peut-être réduire les maladies hydriques et améliorer la santé des zones les plus vulnérables. Et justement, c'est dans ces conditions-là que le Tchad est en train de travailler pour que ces défis-là soient relevés. Et je suis content aujourd'hui d'apprendre que la Banque mondiale s'associe à 9 autres banques multilatérales de développement pour accroître leur financement climatique en faveur des pays à revenus faibles et intermédiaires, et donc à hauteur de 120 milliards de dollars, dont les 42% sont destinés à l'adaptation. Donc, d'ici 2030, donc où ça finit l'agenda sur le développement durable, donc la fin des ODD, ce montant-là peut booster la mise en œuvre des objectifs de développement durable et donc accélérer la mise en œuvre des objectifs de développement durable. Donc c'est une occasion pour nous d'appeler les autres partenaires, techniques et financiers, d'emboîter le pas à la Banque mondiale et de ces 9 autres banques multilatérales pour venir en aide aux pays comme le mien, le Tchad, qui subit aujourd'hui ce fardeau énorme et dont les ONG internationales, les autres organisations internationales n'arrivent pas à accompagner le Tchad pour faire face à cette situation. Je vous remercie.
Mr. Issa Tijabir, thank you very much, and thank you for reminding us that you and your nation are at the front line of climate change and the extreme weather events that you have, and the need of the World Bank to listen to all parliamentarians and stepping up to assist. So I appreciate the comments, and I'm sure everyone in this room does as well, so thank you. My next individual I'd like to speak is Ms. Piveni Piakula from Tonga, who also is at the front of the coalface when it comes to climate change. Thank you very much. Take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have only 2 questions, but before I pose the questions, I would like to begin and share with you a quote from one of the Poland academia that have won a Nobel Prize over her work on radioactivities. And I quote, "There is nothing in this life is to be, there is nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. Now is the time to seek more, to understand more, so that we fear less." This whole global phenomena have scared most of the small island states. 166 islands out of 206 only contribute less than 10% of our carbon emissions. 166. Point that I'm trying to say here, they can sleep and do nothing, and they had nobody. They have no contributions. There are chemical reactions that science has proved to us that irreversible chemical change is a precipitation of chemical substance that are reversible, different from physical change. It's all reversible because they are not forming any fat substance. We have been talking about mitigations, adaptations, and focus on the effect of a phenomena that caused by carbon emissions. Question that I want to pose. What measure have these global organizations or platforms have put against the reductions and decomposing of carbon dioxide from our atmosphere? The only known scientifically, the only known decompositions of carbon dioxide is through the chemical reactions of the process of photosynthesis. When plants apply that chemical reactions, chemical process to decompose carbon dioxide and produce oxygen. But what has our corporate and our welfare country have done to allow the atmosphere that has been warmed by carbon emissions. What have we done to assist the natural process of the chemical reactions? For us to have confidence, because we are innocent victims of the wealthier country burning fossil fuel in pursuit of their wealthiness. They have no bad intention. I believe wealthier countries have no bad intentions. They are just pursuing wealth. But indirectly, the consequences have suffered the smaller island state. 166 island or country out of 206 only contribute less than 10% of our carbon compositions. So question that I don't really care about mitigating the effects. I care so much about mitigating the cost. Carbon emissions. 80% of our energy demand is still based on fossil fuel. What do we do? What have you put as a global organizations? I am sure that each and individual nations are obligated for their own citizens in mitigations. There is no doubt about it. And I don't think that this organization should tell us that we need to do that, because we know we are here in Parliament for our citizens. We will find the way forward. But I am more concerned of what is in place, mitigation or measure to reduce. Because science told us that the chemical reaction is irreversible, that's why the global warming is still heading high. 2024, we have the hottest day, hottest sea, hottest temperature. But from 2015, we set a target. We agreed on certain initiative, but yet we don't see any result. Mitigations for us that are innocent victims of this whole phenomena, what have we got? You build your wealth by burning fossil fuel, and we are never compensated because we had no choice. It's about time that the finance mechanism architects should consider coordinated with the 40 countries that emit 90% of our carbon emissions. Coordinated through dialogue, through volunteer, not by law, but volunteer, because they have enjoyed the wealth of burning fossil fuel, and we suffer in the other end of the coin. So it's about time that they voluntarily consider those that are hurt innocently. I would like to end my statement with this quote. The ultimate purpose of life, to help others. And if you can't help them, don't hurt them. We are hurt in the other end of the world. But if you hurt us, please do help us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your thought-provoking comments. And of course, Tonga is at the forefront of the changes, and in particular, as part of the Small Island Development States, acceleration of climate finance is absolutely important. And the comment you made at the beginning, which was really profound, and I've written it down, is nothing in life is to be feared, it's only to be understood. I will take that away with me. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Ali Ozkaya from Turkey. Thank you.
konuşmamı Türkçe yapacağım. Sayın parlamenterler, saygıdeğer katılımcılar, öncelikle hepinizi selamlıyorum. Bu güzel programı yapan Azerbaycan Milli Meclisi Başkanı ve IPU Başkanı'na teşekkür ediyorum. Azerbaycan'ın bu güzel programdaki ev sahipliğini saygıyla selamlıyorum. Günümüzde iklim değişikliğini tetikleyen unsurlar denildiğinde aklımıza öncelikle sanayi üretimler gelse de dünyada yaşanan savaşlar ve çatışmaların da iklim üzerinde ciddi etkileri vardır. Örneğin İsrail'in Gazze'ye yönelik saldırılarının ilk 3 ayında kaydedilen karbon emisyonu miktarı 26 ülkenin karbon emisyonunu aşmıştır. İkinci Dünya Savaşı'ndaki kullanılan bombalardan çok daha fazlası kullanılarak karbon emisyonu ciddi manada dünyaya zarar vermiştir. Bu savaş Gazze'de 10 yıllar boyunca telafi edilemeyecek çevresel zararlara neden olmuştur. Tarım arazileri ve ekinler zarar görmüş, bombaların ve saldırıların yol açtığı zehirli atıklar nedeniyle su kaynakları, topraklar, deniz ve hava kirlenmiştir. İklim değişikliği aynı zamanda sağlık ve gıda güvenliği alanlarında da olumsuz etkilere yol açmaktadır. Gıda üretimi, su kaynakları ve tarımsal verimlilik de azalırken gıdanın kalitesi de düşmektedir. İklim değişikliği özellikle çocuklar, hamile kadınlar ve yaşlı bireyler başta olmak üzere insan sağlığını tehdit etmekte, anemi, bağışıklık zayıflaması, büyüme geriliği ve depresyon gibi sağlık sorunlarına yol açarak beden ve ruh sağlığı üzerinde ciddi olumsuz etkiler yaratmaktadır. Değerli meslektaşlarım, bu bağlamda gerek ulusal gerekse uluslararası çabaları desteklemek adına parlamentoların sunacağı katkı ve rehberlik büyük önem taşımaktadır. Aynı zamanda bir insani kriz olduğu kadar iklim krizi de derinleştiren Gazze ve dünyadaki diğer bölgelerdeki savaş ve çatışmalara son vermek de biz parlamenterlerin sorumluluk alanına yer almaktadır. İklim değişikliği ve savaşların gıda sorunu açısından yarattığı durumu anlamak için 1 Ağustos 2022'de Sayın Cumhurbaşkanımız Recep Tayyip Erdoğan'ın öncülüğünde İstanbul'da düzenlenen ve yapılan Rusya-Ukrayna Savaşı sonraki tahıl anlaşması ve tahıl koridoruyla 30 milyon tonun üzerinde tahılın bütün dünyadaki ihtiyaç sahibi ülkelere ulaştığı ve ciddi bir açlıkla önlendiği hepinizce malumdur. İşte böyle bir ortamda daha adil bir dünya mümkün diyoruz. Daha adil bir dünyanın kurulması için de biz parlamenterlerin öncülüğünde hep beraber daha fazla birlikte çalışmak ve adil bir dünyayı oluşturmak, bu adil dünya oluşurken de sera gazlarını en çok salan gelişmiş ülkelerin kayıp ve zarar fonuna çok daha finansman katkısı sağlayarak gelişmekte olan ülkeler ve ada ülkeleri gibi en çok iklim değişikliğinden etkilenen ülkelerin finansmana ulaşması konusunda yine parlamentoların ciddi manada gündem oluşturması ve destek sağlaması gerektiğini düşünüyoruz. Bu vesileyle toplantımızın sağlıkla ve iyilikle sonuçlanmasını diliyor. Hepinize saygılar sunuyorum.
Thank you very much. And a sharp reminder that there are currently 59 conflicts in the world that are all contributing to climate change and ecocide. A last contribution, and I hope they can do it from the chair, not least because we're running out of time, is Mr. Mohammed Askari from Iran. If somebody could bring him the mic, it would be great if he could stay there. It'd be okay. We'll bring a mic over to you. There we go. Yeah. Okay. If I want.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. ابتدا لازم میدونم عرض سلام داشته باشم محضر همه همکاران عزیز و تشکر بکنم از مجلس ملی آذربایجان که همه ما رو در کنار هم گرد آوردن برای مسئله مهمی در بحث تغییرات اقلیمی و آب و هوایی. تلاش برای حفاظت از سلامت و امنیت غذایی در مواجهه با آب و هوایی که در حال تغییر است. همکاران محترم، موضوع مهمی که بایستی در این گونه نشست‌ها بیشتر مورد توجه قرار گیرد مربوط به حوزه سلامت عمومی می باشد. آمارهای نگران کننده جهانی نشان می دهد که بیش از 3 میلیارد نفر در سراسر جهان با تأثیرات گرمایی جهانی بر سلامتی روبرو هستند. تأکید می کنم دیگر کاهش انتشار گازهای گلخانه‌ای یک گزینه نیست، بلکه یک ضرورت فوری و انسانی است. امروز همگان می‌بینیم کشورهای در حال توسعه در راستای بحث تغییرات اقلیمی به وظیفه خطیر خودشون خوب عمل نمی‌کنند. آنگونه که باید و شاید به کشورهای در حال توسعه کمک نمی‌کنند. ما در دنیای خطرناک و پرتلاطمی زندگی می‌کنیم، دورانی از تهدیدات فزاینده، رقابت استراتژیک و درگیری و تغییرات آب و هوایی. در حال حاضر تغییرات آب و هوایی یک تهدید جدی برای امنیت غذایی جهان است. امنیت غذایی یکی از مباحث امروز جوامع بشری است. خطر اصلی آن تهدید تولید مواد غذایی در جهان علاوه بر آن هزینه‌های زندگی رو بسیار افزایش داده. خشکسالی، امواج گرما، سیل، آفات و بیماری‌هایی که به صورت اپیدمی در آمده که تولید کنندگان رو دچار چالش و مشکل کرده. قطع به یقین باید در این راستا کمک بشود. کشورهای در حال توسعه زیرساخت‌های خودشون رو مهیا بکنند. شاید نه، یقیناً یکی از مأموریت‌های این جلسات و این نشست‌ها بحث سلامت مردمه. همان گونه که سازمان بهداشت جهانی WHO در راستای مأموریت تولید غذای سالم و سازمان خاربار جهانی FAO داره این مسائل رو دنبال میکنه، این نشست‌ها باید خروجی داشته باشه. کاپ 27، کاپ 28 وقتی بررسی میکنیم آنچنان خروجی از خود نشان نداده. قطع به یقین باید مسئله کاپ 29 خروجی داشته باشه، چرا که ما نمایندگان ملت‌ها مسئولیت داریم در راستای یک زندگی خوب، یک زندگی همراه با سلامت برای ملت‌ها و دولت‌ها و آیندگان. بنابراین ما به یک تغییر اساسی در رویکرد امنیت غذایی با تمرکز بر راه‌حل‌های بلند مدت پایدار نیازمندیم. بدون تغییر و بدون اقدام آنی نمیتوانیم به اون نقطه مطلوبی که مد نظر هست دست پیدا بکنیم. با تغییر سیاست‌های کشاورزی پتانسیل زیادی برای کاهش تغییرات آب و هوایی و حمایت از زندگی صلح‌آمیز، انعطاف پذیر و فراگیر برای همگان وجود دارد. یک دنیای غذای امن و مغذی برای همه نیاز به سرمایه‌گذاری گسترده، نوآوری، علم، فناوری، استفاده از ظرفیت‌های دانش بنیان در حوزه‌های مختلف امنیت غذایی قطعاً می‌تواند همه ملت‌ها به ویژه ملت‌های در حال توسعه رو به یک نقطه مطلوب برساند. امنیت غذایی زمانی ایجاد می شود که تمام افراد به صورت مستمر دارای توانایی جسمی و اقتصادی لازم برای دستیابی به مواد غذایی کافی و امن بوده و می توانند نیازها و اولویت‌های غذای خود برای داشتن یک زندگی پویا را پوشش دهند. این تعریف 4 رکن مهم امنیت غذا را به وجود آورده: موجودی، فراهمی، دسترسی، سلامت و استفاده و بهره برداری و ثبات و پایداری. اگر ثبات و پایداری در بحث توسعه امنیت غذایی ایجاد بشود، قطع به یقین همگان بهره خواهند برد. تبعیضی ایجاد نخواهد شد. بنابراین در این راستا همه ظرفیت‌ها باید پای کار بیاد. کشورها به طور غالب 7 استراتژی را برای تأمین امنیت غذای موجود در بین شهروندان رو باید دنبال بکنن. این استراتژی ها عبارتند از استراتژی حمایت، خدمات دهی، کمک رسانی و استراتژی سرمایه گذاری در بازار و تبلیغات، استراتژی یافتن منابع جدید و محصولات جایگزین، استراتژی توانمندسازی، استراتژی ذخیره‌سازی، استراتژی تحولات ساختاری و نهادسازی و استراتژی تحقیق و توسعه که میتواند در حوزه رسیدن به توسعه پایدار و همه‌جانبه ما را کمک بکند. امروز جمهوری اسلامی ایران به واسطه وجود ظرفیت‌ها و قابلیت‌ها توانسته قسمتی از مشکلات خودش رو حل بکنه، اما وجود تحریم‌های ظالمانه و ناجوانمردانه مشکلاتی برای ما به وجود آمده. امروز مجامع بین المللی باید کمک بکنن در راستای برطرف کردن تحریم‌های ظالمانه. از طرفی گرسنگی، آوارگی ملت‌های مظلومی مثل ملت فلسطین، ملت لبنان، چرا این گونه باید باشد؟ تا کی نظام سلطه باید در حوزه بحث امنیت غذایی مشکلاتی ایجاد بکنه؟ تا کی باید کشورهای توسعه یافته صرفاً به دنبال منافع خودشون باشند؟ امروز جمهوری اسلامی بیش از 7000 مهاجر افغانی رو پذیرفته. کدام مجامع بین المللی کمک کردند؟ کجا کمک کردند؟ هر کجا اتفاقی افتاده جمهوری اسلامی با نگاه بشردوستانه ورود کرده. آیا امروز دیدیم کشوری برای بحث کمک به 7 میلیون افغانی که در ایران زندگی میکنن کمکی کرده باشد؟ بنابراین ما معتقدیم این گونه نشست‌های بین المللی قطع به یقین باید خروجی داشته باشه. ملت‌ها، مردم آزادیخواه و انسان‌های آزادیخواه همه منتظرند از این نشست‌ها و از این مجامع خروجی بیرون برود، ببینند آنچه را که شعارش داده می شود در دنیا، ببینند آنچه را که گفته می شود. بنابراین ما قائلیم به این که امروز همگان باید در بحث امنیت غذایی کمک بکنن، ظرفیت‌ها و قابلیت‌های دنیا پای کار بیاد، مجامع بین المللی، سازمان بهداشت جهانی WHO و مجموعه تغییرات اقلیمی کمک بکنن که بتوانیم جهانی آزاد، آباد و عدالت محور داشته باشیم. همگان از ظرفیت‌ها و قابلیت‌های حوزه عدالتی بتوانند استفاده بکنن. ممنون و سپاسگزارم.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for valuable contributions and reminding us that 3 billion directly are affected by public health today. In closing, I have an opportunity to give a minute each for our panelists here to have a brief final word. So if I can pass first of all to our first speaker, which was Martin. Thank you very much.
I hope you have seen in the all-encompassing world of climate change how much of an effect it has also on health and on human well-being. What it forces us to do is to think in systems. And it's a parliament's job to hold the government responsible and bring the links together of the different agenda items. I have seen in my life over many years in working in public service how often there is a will to coordinate, but how incredibly complicated it is. And I hope this session has inspired to break silos, to connect people, to talk to your colleagues in different committees to create a holistic answer of the parliaments to the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. And over to Irene from Uruguay.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias, señor moderador. La verdad que celebro poder estar participando de este importante evento de la COP29. He escuchado con mucha atención tanto las expresiones de los señores panelistas como de los integrantes, los participantes de aquí. Acá se ha hablado mucho del COVID y creo que eso nos ha servido de ejemplo de cómo pudimos actuar ante algo que no teníamos pensado, algo que afectó no solamente en el Río de la Plata, en América, sino el mundo entero. Y todos juntos pudimos rápidamente responder y buscar soluciones, llegar las vacunas. Creo que ese es el método que tenemos que trabajar ante este desafío del cambio climático. El cambio climático que desconoce fronteras. Y es la forma que tenemos que trabajar todos conjuntamente, porque de nada sirve si en América actuamos de una forma cuando en Europa o en África se actúa de otra forma. Tenemos que trabajar en forma coordinados. Así que y es muy importante, más allá, no solamente el tema de dinero, acá se habló del Banco Mundial, nosotros tenemos que tener verdaderas políticas públicas para trabajar en forma coordinada, porque si no, el dinero tampoco sirve de nada si no tenemos ya prevención de esas políticas públicas para dar respuesta. Así que celebro de poder estar trabajando aquí y que cada uno de nosotros llevemos los conocimientos que hemos compartido en cada uno de nuestros países para, entre todos, lograr una solución, porque en definitiva estamos usufructuando un bien que es de nuestros hijos. Así que bienvenidos a este trabajo en forma conjunta. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Irina. And last but not least, Parvana, who's here from the Azerbaijan Parliament. And let me remind you, she's 2 months in Parliament. She's been excellent today so far, so thank you. Lasting comments.
Thank you. Thank you for giving the floor, dear Mr. Moderator. I would like to focus on and answer the question of our speaker there, which highlighted about small island countries. Decarbonization is vice versa important with decolonization. If we want to decarbonize small island countries, then we should decolonize them. Climate change talks should be open for each countries, every individuals. There are some countries that cannot be part of UNFCCC conventions because they are not independent. For example, New Caledonia and French Polynesia are in UN decolonized list for several years, but they are still cannot be independent to sign even resolutions, conventions, and to be part of UNFCCC convention on behalf of them. So there is an injustice in the root of climate change, and we need to address this inequality in order to fight against climate change. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This brings us to a close. Thank you to all our panelists and participants for the insights shared today in today's discussion on safeguarding health and food security in the face, obviously, of climate change. The rich contributions, and we've done a real whirlwind of ideas and examples and thoughts about what we need to do in the future. It's given us the importance of how it's important to have collaborative and comprehensive approaches that we take in discussing these urgent challenges. So I hope these ideas and the strategies you've heard about have given you food for thought after all the topics about food, and give us some ideas about how we're going to take action globally through our parliaments. Thank you all for your contributions. I now draw session 6 to a close. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, and we begin for our next session, session 7, dedicated to navigating human mobility and climate change, addressing climate-induced migration and displacement. And the moderator for the session is Mr. Gaya Mamadov, member.
No, I mean, you would need it, yeah, all right. Çalışacağım. Vaxt kalsa sonra bakarım da. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Madam President, dear members of Parliament, dear guests. We are at the last session of our gathering. It is last, but not least, one of the most important issues related to climate change. Before we start our panel, I would like to make an important administrative remark. We will have to finish at 4 p.m. sharp this session so that the closing session can start on time. The reason is today is actually rest day for the COP, and all our security and admin personnel, they need to also do some necessary stuff here at the venue. So I will ask all those who would like to make intervention or questions, keep their interventions and questions to 2 minutes sharp. There will be no 2 minutes plus 1 second, and we'll have to finish each and every intervention of our panel. As you know, one of the most visible consequences of the climate change and the most humanitarian one is exactly the climate-induced migration and displacement. I've came across to many numbers, ranging from dozens of millions up to 1 billion of people being displaced and or forced to migrate internally or cross-border. But I think our panels will speak on them on these issues in detail. Certainly, parliaments have a great role to play in this regard. At least they need to be aware of the scope and the magnitude of the problem and the key issues on agenda international and domestically. When it comes to COP29, we have already produced some results. The loss and damage fund has become operational, which is the structure within the COP mechanisms that directly deals with the climate-induced and forced climate-induced migration and displacement. I have here a distinguished panel from highly qualified speakers from the UNHCR and Refugee International and the Member of Parliament from Thailand. First speaker on my list is Ms. Michelle Yonatani from the United Nations High Commissariat for Refugees. Madam Yonatani, floor is yours, please.
Thank you so much for this very kind invitation to speak to you all today at this gathering. So yes, I'm working for the UN Refugee Agency in the Office of the Special Advisor to the High Commissioner on Climate Action. And at UNHCR, like many of you in your own countries, we can see how the impacts of climate change are increasingly contributing to the drivers of displacement. And that's not a simple story. In fact, what we're seeing are increasingly complex patterns of new, of repeated, and of protracted crises and displacement, both within and across borders. Indeed, how this happens as a very complex is as complex and diverse as the countries and the communities and the individuals being affected. So whether that's through the impacts, very directly of extreme weather events, floods and storms, heat waves and so on, through slow onset processes on already exposed and vulnerable populations, impacts that may manifest as disasters, as the collapse of sensitive livelihoods, as the exacerbation of intercommunal tensions and conflict over scarce resources. What we're seeing at this is a real, a current, and a growing reality. And as I think some of the discussions in this forum have been reflecting on in terms of the vulnerability of populations, indeed, climate change impacts are increasing the vulnerability also of forcibly displaced populations. People who've been living in displacement for years, even decades, generations of children who are growing up as refugees, as internally displaced persons in their own countries also, and having impacts also on those countries and communities that are hosting them, as well as those that they are returning to, their countries and communities of origin. And so when we're talking about this issue of displacement, we need to consider all who are being affected. And what we are asking everyone to do is to start to shift, to understand this complexity, to recognize it, and at the same time to really shift our thinking, to really focus on implementation, on solutions. And to do that, there are some key enablers to make that action happen. First of all, evidence, data and evidence. So while there is a lot of data and evidence out there already, we still need more that is really speaking to what's happening at the national, at the local levels, and that really embraces this complexity that I was talking about. So the High Commissioner for Refugees, Mr. Filippo Grandi, was here during the Leaders' Summit earlier in the first week, presenting the launch of a new report from UNHCR, which is the result of collaboration with around 13 expert organizations and researchers, cutting-edge scientists, organizations also led by refugees themselves, helping to bring together that evidence that is needed by policymakers, by planners, by communities themselves, to really recognize those interlinkages, how to design, plan for effective, targeted policy financing, and of course the implementation that actually reaches the most vulnerable communities and individuals. I mean, we hear about this a lot, leave no one behind, all of these slogans, but how do we do it in practice? And certainly the humanitarians, the communities themselves know exactly how to do that already. So in that report, what it's highlighting is that out of the some 120 million forcibly displaced people worldwide, that's people forcibly displaced by conflict and persecution, 3 in every 4 are currently living in communities already exposed to high to extreme climate change impacts. Countries like Sudan, like Haiti, Myanmar, Ethiopia, and so on. We've also seen, by bringing together the data and the modeling, that the number of countries facing extreme exposure to climate-related hazards is expected to rise from just 3 countries currently, this is the extremely exposed, to 65 in 2040. And most of those countries are hosting forcibly displaced populations. So that's the evidence. But of course also the finance, such a central discussion here at the COP. What we are really concerned about is that gap in financing for countries and communities where it is most needed, in fact, to address this escalating injustice of the climate crisis. That gap is absolutely stark. It's also growing. So currently, 90% of climate finance targets middle-income, high-emitting countries, while states facing high levels of fragility only receive around $2 per person in annual adaptation funding, and that's compared to $161 per person in non-fragile states. And then even when it is reaching countries, we are observing that less than 10% of climate finance in fragile states actually is leaving the capital cities, rarely reaching the local level where refugees, internally displaced persons often are. Finance. Another third point, of course, which is why parliamentarians naturally are incredibly important in your role here, is around governance and a need for strengthened protection of people displaced by the impacts of climate change, but never climate change alone, but its intersection with conflict with other drivers of vulnerability. And this isn't a theory, this isn't a political position, it's a devastating daily reality, with people being forced to flee within and across borders in search of safety, and states have responsibilities to ensure that they have access to safe territory, to documentation, to protection against forced return to situations which are simply unsurvivable. So indeed, all of you as parliamentarians have a really critical role to play in reversing these trends through actions which are needed to protect, to include, to invest, and to accelerate. To protect displaced people by applying and adapting, first of all, the existing legal tools that are out there. So there have been a lot of discussions around, does a refugee status, does international refugee law apply? Well, yes, actually, in certain circumstances, it certainly does. And we have done a lot of further thinking and provided guidance on this very topic. To include the voices and the specific needs of displaced populations and their host communities in climate finance and policy decisions. This is still really a gap. So while we hear in the COPs year on year, this discussions around displacement and human mobility more broadly is getting more attention, we're still not seeing that translate systematically into provisions in the NDCs, in the NAPs. Invest. So as I said on finance, we need to invest more in building climate resilience where the needs are greatest, and fragile and conflict-affected settings must be included there. There is no excuse to say it's too difficult, it's too challenging, it can't be done. It is being done. We know it can be done. It must be scaled up. There are ways of doing this, and communities themselves should be the first to be asked about how to make that happen. And finally, to accelerate indeed the reduction of carbon emissions, so the bigger root cause behind all of the problems we're seeing today, to prevent the climate change impacts, but absolutely accelerate that investment in adaptation and to address loss and damage, which is already happening, to avert, minimize, and address further displacement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Yonatani, for the very insightful and comprehensive coverage of this highly important topic. Indeed, a durable solution in case of climate-induced displacement is much harder than other types of displacement. Yeah, finance, that's important. The issue of the COP29, it is common and differentiated task for the entire UN family, all member states, I'd say. All right, again, thank you very much. Now, next speaker on my list is Ms. Ayo Helen from the Refugee International. Refugee International is an international operating non-governmental organization. Madam Helen, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I want to start my statement by asking you all questions. There's a question I've never got an answer. I've been asking myself for the last 5 years, but I didn't find the answer. Maybe I can find the answer in the room here today. I would like to know what is the color of climate disasters. And does climate disaster have ears? Does it have eyes? If it does, why for all these years we've been discussing climate disasters, but it hasn't gone away? It's still with us. I am here today to represent the refugee community. I'm a South Sudanese refugee, born and raised in Uganda. I still live in Uganda. As we all know, Uganda hosts about 1.7 million refugees from East Africa. And climate disaster, it's really affecting us, the refugee community in East Africa, so badly. And we want to be part of the solutions, not beneficiaries. When I was young, my mother used to send me to the forest to get vegetables, get firewood. I knew forest as a supermarket where I get food from and also energy. But now I live in a settlement that has no trees. It's bare. We hardly find food because our supermarket is no longer there. When I look at our eyes in the house, I see potential refugees. Do you know that at any point you'll become a refugee in future? And what we are facing today will also affect you. Climate disaster is real, and it affects the poor people most, because we live in an area that is already exposed to climate change. As I speak, just last week, 380,000 South Sudanese were displaced by flood. And they're crossing border, entering Uganda, going to Kenya and Ethiopia. And nobody's speaking about them. These are people who have children. Their children who should be going to school. But now they can't because their school is no more. They have animals. Most of them are cattle keepers. Now they're moving from their place, going to other region where it has been occupied by the farmers. And there's already conflict because farmers and cattle keepers can't stay together. They are crossing border to Uganda. And all the 13 refugee settlements in Uganda are in remote areas, already exposed to climate disasters. Do you imagine being displaced to be displaced? It's a hard topic. to discuss. I don't see reason why we should be discussing climate issues every year without action. COP started 28 years ago, and the discussion will go on. Has it stopped disaster to happen? No, it's still happening because we are having more discussions than actions. I think this is time we should take actions. This is not time to discuss climate disaster, because the more we sit down to discuss climate disaster, the more it comes nearer to us. I just imagine that one day during COP, God forbid, disaster will unfold when we are inside here discussing about climate change. Do you imagine that? That you're here sitting about climate disaster and outside landslides happens. You get out, you have nowhere to go. There are no cars. There are holes surrounded, and you have to rescue yourself. That is the time we shall understand that in climate disaster, there should be more action than discussions. And that's what I request us to do. My questions to the MPs from African region: when do you think Africa will become energy independent? Do you have that question in the back of your mind? We depend purely on the Western world in terms of energy. The solar energy that Africa should have access to, it's more expensive because it comes from China. It comes with a lot of tax because it crosses several borders to reach Africa. So when are we going to become energy independent? Because the grid is not reliable. And in Uganda and in any part of the world, you see the kind of structure that refugees live in. It's already enough to expose them to wind, leave alone disaster. If rain comes, only the wind can blow away your tent. So by the time rain comes, you're already outside. You have nothing to do. So rather, we should do more action than sitting here to discuss climate disasters. And we shouldn't look at refugees as beneficiaries. We should look at refugees as partners in fighting climate change, because we want to be part of this fight. And we should also make climate financing accessible to the civil society and refugee-led organizations, because refugee-led organizations are doing so much, but they are not even mentioned in COP discussions. If I'm to ask how many refugees are here to attend COP, trust me, shall not even reach 10. We are very few. It doesn't matter the state you are, but trust me, we are all potential refugees. Tomorrow when you become a refugee, don't you want to be part of COP discussions? It affects all of us. So all of us need to be in these discussions. And we need to take action together. My last request to all the MPs in the House that please develop policies with the consideration of the voice of the refugees, especially the NAP. I am part of the NAP committee for Uganda with the intention that the NAP will be inclusive of the voice of the refugees in Uganda. And what about in your countries? Can you take Uganda as a good example to make sure that your NAP is inclusive of the refugee voice in your countries? If you're not hosting the refugees, just imagine yourself, close your eyes, seeing yourself crossing border one day without anything in your hands, becoming homeless again, and you will understand the need of including refugees in your NAP. Thank you.
Madam Helen, thank you very much for making this case so powerful and emotionally. Indeed, the climate-induced migration is the most significant and the most underreported consequence of climate change. It is something relevant for entire discussions, not only in the intergovernmental format, but also for the parliamentary format. Here we have a speaker, MP, Madam Distinguished Member of the Thailand Parliament, Madam Saniwan Wabon. Madam, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, honorable panelists and ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to present the Thailand experience on human mobility in relation to the climate change in this session. Thailand is the 18th rank in the world for greenhouse gas emission. But we are in the top 10 in the world on the global warming index list. We are facing with various extreme events and climate-related disasters. Thailand's national economy relies on agriculture sector. The farmer is very vulnerable group because they need to rely on the weather for their plant, for the cropping calendar. So their livelihoods are impacted by the changing participation pattern with increasingly common extreme events and also flood in some areas and more extensive drought period in others. When farmers from the rural area province with high poverty rates, particularly in the northeastern part of Thailand, repeat drought leading to the reduction of harvest output, are often temporarily migrant to urban area, fighting for their new works to earn a living. Recently, we are confronting with the flash flood and landslide in the north of the Thailand. Over 10,000 households affected and gonna have the storm with the extreme rainfall in the south at the end of this year. Samut Sakhon province situated along the coastal line face severe coastal erosion resulting from the sea level rise. So the evidence suggests that in only 5 years from now on, parts of the coastline receded by over 30 meters, leading to the critical infrastructure and resident destruction, which result in the inland relocation of families there. Over 20% of our population live in flooding area and has been displaced as a result of this natural disaster. With forecast by the World Bank and ADB, coastal flooding could affect a further 2.4 million people by 2070. With regard to the climate-induced human mobility, Thailand has issued both domestic displacement and cross-border migration. Over the 15 years, 94% of displacement caused by storm, while the rest of 6% caused by flood. In 2011, the severe flood occurred during the monsoon season in Thailand. This caused the displacement of more than 2.5 million people. Another issue is the climate-induced migrant workers from neighboring countries, in which found most in sugarcane sector in the border province. In the aspect of the national policy framework, we also have gap in our policy. Thailand doesn't have a legal or policy framework dedicated to addressing the migration, environment, and climate change. But we include the human mobility indicators into the national policy framework, like Climate Change Master Plan and National Disaster Risk Management Plan. However, the policy development is primarily focused on reducing driver and risk and enabling the population to stay, rather than facilitating human mobility and safeguard people who are on the move. The key climate change documents like long-term road greenhouse gas emission development strategy and NDC of Thailand, or even the National Adaptation Plan and Draft Climate Change Act still don't include human mobility indicator. While cross-border displacement of migration is absent in the identified policy framework, Thailand have the MOU with Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar. At least the national level, we only have the Immigration Acts. Therefore, there is a role of the parliamentarian to fill this gap by working closely with the government in formulating the robust policy to strengthen adaptive capacity of local people, which can be done in various ways. The budget should be allocated to build the resilient infrastructure, like Spong City model is one example that can be applied in Thailand. Moreover, the climate data should be provided for local community. Comprehensive, the early warning system should be installed throughout the nation. And also the sustainable agriculture should be adopted. The case of Surin province in the northeastern of Thailand provides a great example of this model. So we can adopt the drought-resistant crop, the water-efficient irrigation system, and the efficient water usage, and also the community-based water management. In applying these measures can reduce as less 15% of migration to urban areas, as farmer well-being will become better and more secure and more sustained. So after severe flood in 2011, the government established a local wisdom with modern technology and initiated the Chao Phraya River Flood Management Project. The project comprising various measures such as the flood barrier, the network of drainage tunnel, widening and dredging of tunnel. So this example can help Bangkok from flood-related displacement by over 30%. So this can ensure the low-income settlement to stay in their home. To ensure migration policy and legal framework are inclusive, evidence-based, and well-coordinated. So as a parliamentarian, we need to monitor national and international migration policy development and promote awareness and understanding of international migration law. I'm of the view that as we are the parliament are among the most important factors to help to shape the course of climate change impact. As our Thai delegation intervened in the previous session, we are in the step of preparing the draft Climate Change Act, so which is the comprehensive legislation aimed to address the climate change in Thailand. This Game Changer Act will be instrumental to ensure that we will transform to be a low-emission economy with climate justice for all. So clear political will nationwide with parliamentarian mandates as a main driver will facilitate the smooth drafting process while leaving no one behind. Therefore, I encourage the fellow legislators to embrace the principle of collaboration, inclusiveness, and people participation into climate-related political. In summary, last but not least, I believe that the collaboration between stakeholders is instrumental to reduce climate-induced migration. Local community could and must be at the forefront of the creation of climate resilience strategy. As already mentioned, the government-initiated policy should be designed with a will to ensure the voice of the local be ahead, so as to achieve the most effective local climate action and reduce the chance for climate-induced displacement. The public-private partnership on key climate-related projects within local communities should be instrumental, as these organizations have available resources and manpower to ensure success and effective deliverable. Also, international support to the climate finance and adaptation is significant to build resilience in local communities that are often susceptible to climate change and climate-related migration. As Ms. Ayu said, we discussed for a long time already, so it's time to act now. We are facing extreme weather event today, not tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Madam Baban, thank you very much indeed for your coverage. Indeed, parliaments have a role to play, and your presentation shows that there are cases where there are meaningful practical activity on part of the parliament. Now we are quickly moving to the question and answer or discussion part. I have in my list 9 inscribed speakers. I hope they all will be able to speak given the time limitation. Again, I kindly ask you to limit your interventions to 2 minutes. If you have a longer intervention, you can share it with the Secretariat, which would happily add it to the conference proceedings. With that in mind, the first, let's say, speaker on my list is Mrs. Gabriela Morawska-Staniczka from Poland.
Honorable guests, dear friends, I'm still thinking about the powerful speech we heard a few minutes ago of our panelist from Uganda. And as she said, we are standing at the crossroads of climate crisis and human mobility. And we must confront the realities that both climate change and migration pose to individuals, societies, and nations across the globe. The influences of climate change on migration are often indirect. Evidence indicates that climate change interacts with existing migration drivers such as economic instability and resource scarcity. When the productivity of agriculture declines, of livelihoods are threatened, families are compelled to seek opportunities elsewhere, resulting in migration. It's also crucial to understand that extreme weather events, hurricanes, floods, droughts, pose immediate and existential threats, driving people from their homes on a scale we have never witnessed before. These events disrupt lives and communities, making it essential to consider these realities in our migration policies. Parliaments around the world should develop coherent, inclusive policies addressing climate-induced migration and natural disasters. Integration is the key. We must embed environmental consideration into all relevant policies, strategies, and programs. It is not only about responding to the crisis, but proactively preventing displacement, before it occurs. Regional and national actors play a crucial role in these processes. And they must be encouraged and supported to address these pressing challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Stanechka, for being punctual again. So next speaker on my list is Mr. Kaplieli Lanunta. You can also choose speak from your seat. Mr. Lanunta from Tonga, that's you? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I felt having to travel for 40 hours from where I come from, I felt that there is a need to voice from my perspective at this forum of what I think that will help form a better approach from my observations. Mr. Moderator, I have learned so far that climate change and climate crisis and impact affect everyone in this whole planet. It's not only the small island states, it's also affect the biggest emitters as well. The difference is because the biggest emitter have collected enough wealth to counter that impact in their own resources. Whereas for us, the innocent victims, we lack the resources to combat that. I have learned that this Paris Agreement have set a target, only two targets, is to tackle the climate system change and also to tackle its negative impacts. In this conference, 29, you have set the center of, or the front of this COP29 is the finance mechanisms. There was a session on the climate financial architectures, but let me reiterate that I fail to understand the mechanism in place, as from how you collected funds and how to disperse and access funds.
Sir, again, indeed, thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you.
Let me join applauding you for excellent remarks. Thank you. Now, next speaker on my list is Mr. Rahmatullah Nourouzi from Islamic Republic of Iran. You can choose speak from your place or from the tribune, but again, by observing 2 minutes rule. Salam.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. از برگزار کنندگان و میزبانی مجلس ملی آذربایجان مجددا تشکر میکنم. ما باید واقعیت تغییرات آب و هوایی از یک سو کشتار بیرحمانه اجباری در سرزمین‌های اشغالی توسط رژیم صهیونیستی رو شاهدیم. همه باید به تغییرات آب و هوایی توجه جدی بکنیم و به رویکردها و تکنیک‌های جدید روی بیاریم. ما امروز در مقابل رنج بشری توسط رژیم‌های جنایتکار مسئولیت انسانی و تاریخی داریم. امروز در فلسطین، لبنان، یمن ما داریم می‌بینیم میلیون‌ها انسان با مشکلات عدیده مواجه‌اند. هم رفتارهای غیرقانونی، غیر انسانی، وحشیانه رژیم صهیونیستی، تغییرات اقلیمی توسعه و مهاجرت اجباری انسانی که اینا با هم همزمان شده. این اقدامات همکاران محترم باید هرچه سریعتر متوقف بشه. در جمهوری اسلامی جزش در زمره 6 مسیر مهاجرت قرار داره. با چالش‌های خاصی مواجه، تغییر اقلیم در نتیجه صنعتی شدن کشورهای توسعه یافته، تجاوز و اشغالگری کشورهای زورگو از جمله تجاوز به افغانستان، تخریب محیط زیست، فقر، آوارگی، گرسنگی مشکلات عدیدی رو ایجاد کرده و ما میلیون‌ها افغانی در کشور به عنوان مهاجر پذیراییم. سالیانه بیش از 10 میلیارد تومان، 10 میلیارد دلار، سالانه بیش از 10 میلیارد دلار داره هزینه سالیانه برای کشور جمهوری اسلامی داره. اما جامعه بین‌المللی باید مسئله فوری رو در این خصوص داشته باشه. نکته بعدی بحث تغییرات اقلیمی و زیست محیطی در بحث سدهایی که در بستر آبهای ورودی کشورم در مرز افغانستان که مشکلات عدیده‌ای برای مردم عزیز سیستان و بلوچستان فراهم کرده و باید یه اقدامات اساسی توی این محافل انجام بدیم. همکاران گرامی، نقش پارلمان ها بسیار حیاتی است. پارلمان ها با تقویت هماهنگی و همگرایی و تبادل تجربیات در زمینه قوانین و مقررات و افزایش توانایی بازیگران برای سازگاری با تغییرات اقلیمی و همکاری در زمینه مدیریت منابع طبیعی، حمایت از توافقنامه‌ها و قوانین بین‌المللی و پیشبرد سیاست‌ها و برنامه‌های مختلف در چارچوب دیپلماسی پارلمانی میتونه نقش مهمی ایفا کنه. در پایان جمهوری اسلامی در این راستا طرح شخصی برای افزایش همکاری بین پارلمانی ارائه کرده که آمادگی داره اون رو عرضه می‌کنم.
We'd like to thank for the Islamic Republic of Iran for its indeed great contribution to hosting displaced people from neighboring Afghanistan. Indeed, they have been doing this for so many years. Their contribution is widely acknowledged. Now, the next speaker on my list is Mr. Liam Burney from United Kingdom. Sir, the floor is yours. Sir, 2 minutes rule.
Chair, thank you very much for giving me the floor again today. And let me repeat my thanks both to Martin, a fantastic Secretary General of the IPU, and congratulations to the staff for bringing us together. But I also want to say a huge thank you to the rapporteur from the Azeri team for making sure that we bring together a text on which we can agree. At the heart of this debate is the reality that we cannot end the old extremes of poverty unless we tackle the new extremes of the weather. We know that we are now hopelessly off track to miss the Sustainable Development Goals. We know that this decade ahead now risks becoming a lost decade for development. It underlines why it is so important for us now to take the action that is needed and why it is so important that the richer countries of the North, responsible for 80% of global emissions, step up to their duties today. But that is why it is important that we as parliamentarians make sure that the text that we agree includes 3 particular points. First, we have to be realistic about the scale of climate finance which is now needed. The report of the expert high-level group, published just 3 days ago, tells us that we now need $6.5 trillion a year between now and 2030. That is the latest scale of the estimate for what now must be mobilized. Second, it is important that we recognize the language that was agreed at the last COP. That imperative of accelerating the phase down of unabated coal power, phasing out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies, and driving the transition from fossil fuels. But third, it is important that we as parliamentarians send a clear message to the international financial institutions like the World Bank and the IMF. This is the 80th year of the Bretton Woods Agreement that created those institutions to help us rebuild the world from the ashes of the war. It is now essential that in this 80th year, as they undertake their review for the future, that we as parliamentarians state, insist, call on those organisations to consult with us as parliamentarians, not at the end of their programmes, but at the beginning. That must be something that we put into the process of renewal those institutions for new times. That is something that we should put in to the Lord Malloch-Brown review of the Bretton Woods institutions in this, their 80th year, and that is something that we should send a very clear message for and a very clear call for from this session today. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for observing the 2-minute rule. Again, the next speaker on my list is Member of Parliament from Turkey, Mr. Shamil Ayrım. Sir, floor is yours. Lütfen iki dakika.
Teşekkürler Sayın Başkan. Değerli katılımcılar, öncelikle bu muhteşem organizasyonu gerçekleştiren, COP29'u gerçekleştiren Can Azerbaycan'ın değerli Cumhurbaşkanı Sayın Aliyev'e yürekten teşekkürlerimizi sunuyorum. Ve yine bu organizasyon içerisinde parlamenterleri bir araya getiren Azerbaycan Milli Meclisi Başkanı Sayın Sahibe Gaffarova'ya ve IPU'nun değerli başkanına yürekten teşekkür ediyorum. Değerli katılımcılar, ben bugün burada iklim değişikliğiyle ilgili mücadelesinde böyle önemli bir toplantıda asla göz ardı etmememiz gereken savaş ve çatışmaların çevre ve iklim üzerindeki etkilerini dikkatinizi çekmek istiyorum. Bu etkiler sadece çevresel yıkım olarak kalmamakta. Aynı zamanda insan hareketliğini de derinden etkilemektedir. İklim değişikliği ve çatışmalar birleştiğinde insanlar evlerini terk etmek zorunda kalmakta. Zaten savunmasız olan topluluklarda daha savunmasız hale gelmektedir. Çevresel felaketler ve altyapı tahribatı yaşam alanları sürdürülebilir hale getirerek insanları hem ülke içinde hem de sınır ötesinde zorunlu göçe itmektedir. Birçok iklim uzmanı bugün Gazze Savaşı'nın sadece insani trajedilere yol açmakla kalmadığını, aynı zamanda çevre ve iklim üzerinde kalıcı ve ciddi etkiler bıraktığını ifade etmektedir. Bağımsız kuruluşlar ve Birleşmiş Milletler'de hazırlanan raporlar artık yönetimin çökmesi, su arıtma tesislerinin tahrip edilmesi, suya bulaşan hastalıkların yayılması dahil olmak üzere Gazze'deki çevresel hasarı açıkça ortaya koymaktadır. Silahlı çatışmalar ile küresel ısınma arasındaki bağlantıya baktığımızda bölgedeki sıcaklıkların küresel ortamlardan yaklaşık 2 kat daha hızlı arttığını görmekteyiz. Değerli katılımcılar, bugün burada sizlerin değerli fikirlerini konuşurken maalesef İsrail Gazze'de akıl almaz, ahlak dışı, vicdan dışı saldırılarına devam ediyor. Bunu buradan bir kez daha kınıyorum ve acilen uluslararası camiayı ateşkese davet ediyorum. Orada insanlar ölüyor, çocuklar ölüyor, suçsuz insanlar, kadınlar ölüyor. Lütfen buna duyarlı olsun uluslararası kuruluşlar. Ve sözlerime son verirken öncelikle daha adil bir dünyanın olduğunu sizlere söylemek istiyorum. Sayın Cumhurbaşkanımız Recep Tayyip Erdoğan, Birleşmiş Milletler Genel Kurulu'nda dünya 5'ten büyüktür, daha adil bir dünya mümkündür demişti. Biz de bunu sizlerin huzurlarında bir kez daha tekrarlıyoruz ve demokrasi herkes için diyoruz. Yaşasın bu toplantıyı düzenleyenlere, yaşasın Azerbaycan'a diyorum. Hepinize teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you. Çok sağ olun Sayın Vekilim. Teşekkür ederim. Well, next speaker on my list is Ms. Ranayu Saraswati from Indonesia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, honorable delegates. I will be very, very quick. First of all, Indonesia stands in empathy with our colleagues from Tonga and other island states and also from Uganda. I think it's very important that I will highlight 2 keywords here, and number 1 would be empathy. I think it's very important to ask Indonesia as the initiator of the Asia-Africa Convention. We support the South-South Alliance for a much more powerful voice in the international forums such as this one. When we talk about empathy, Indonesia also is debating on the issue of refugees because we have refugees coming in from the Rohingya conflict, and we understand that with displacement and with the issue of climate-induced migration, there's cultural clashes, and I'm sure other countries that are leaning more towards protectionism, you are also having debates in your own countries about issues like this. And so Indonesia is doing all we can so that we can ensure alleviation of poverty of our own people is taken care of first and foremost. We are planning on being biofuel self-sufficient within 3 years and then exporting within 4 years. We hope our colleagues from Africa will be leaning towards the same way as what our colleague from Uganda has mentioned. I think it's about time that countries in Africa stand up and really realize their own potential, as are we in the Southeast Asia region. Secondly, as politicians, I think we all understand one key word, and that is power. And so my question is, what is the power of the IPU, the UN, or any of the conventions and communiques we sign when there are no consequences we can implement if any of the countries, especially the big emitters, do not respect them? And I think this is a key question if we are talking about how we want to move into action, as we have heard time and time again since yesterday. What are we going to do to ensure what we sign today will be delivered and respected by the big countries? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so, next speaker on my list is Ms. Pashayeva, Member of Parliament from Azerbaijan. I believe you'd like to speak on can someone hand microphone to Madam Pashayeva? No? Yeah, you can come from the restroom.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I think it's great privilege actually to be in this session and listen to the speakers during this 7th session. At the same time, actually, this is also for all of us as the representatives of different parliaments in the world, at least to understand a couple of very important issues, because right now COP29 is at the juncture of global climate debate. And in that case, definitely this issue which we are right now actually talking about, the nexus of climate change and climate-induced migration and displacement, is one of the significant actually challenges of our time. In that case, there have been a lot of interesting issues, and I am really appreciate the people who actually very from their own experience shared their own view about what should be done in these issues and how we can, as a world, as IPU, try to bring everyone together and change and start to do something as a as a people of the world trying to change the reality which we are right now actually facing. In that case, here is my question, is for the all speakers actually, if you can give me this chance. If we are looking forward, let's say, what we are going to have in next 10 years, let's put it that way, because it's good to at least imagine how we are going to come to some kind of vision regarding this situation with climate-induced migration and displacement. One very pessimistic view is that all of us, as one of the speakers already mentioned, we are going to become potential refugees. This is very pessimistic view about the world. But at the same time, we can also need to think very positively, optimistically, how we are going to come to some kind of new way out of this deadlock, because we are in deadlock right now. In that case, please give me your vision in this case. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. All right, exactly 2 minutes. The next speaker on my list is Mr. Julius Pondi from Nigeria.
Thank you, Mr. Chow. I'm from Nigeria, and I'm here to talk about the climate-induced migration in my country. Nigeria is a very big country of about 250 persons, and the coastline of Nigeria occupied about 850. And the climate change has really affected our people. The sea rising level, of course, migration in my country, and it's really affecting them. And in addition to that, is also another one that's created by the IOCs. The IOCs dredging operations and oil explorations, gas flaring has also caused a lot of damage, diseases, and a whole lot of that. The IOCs' negative impact on our people is really, really serious, and they are not adhering to the principles of the developed countries. So it's also a call to say that the companies should adhere to the best practices, global best practices in the world. And again, I also want to say that the cleanup, the oil exploration cleanup practices is also very poor. In a state like Bayelsa in Delta State required about $1 billion to clean up a state. And we have about 9 oil producing states in Nigeria, and the income of the oil exploration to Nigerian coffers is about $30 billion a year. So it's also a call that the impact of the climate change is also very damaging, and it's also a call that the climate funding should be assessed by my country so that we can benefit and also save more lives. The places we used to go to school when we were young now is very, very far away into the ocean. A lot of things is actually going bad in our country, so it's also a call in this gathering that we should please look into our issue and assist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bondi was the last speaker on my list, and he spoke 1 minute 48 seconds. Thank you very much for being that punctual. That concluded again our speakers, and now I'd like to give floor to our panelists if they wish to react to what has been said. You want to say something? Yeah, please.
Thank you so much for your remarks, and perhaps I'll respond to the honourable member from Azerbaijan, who actually asked a very direct question to all of us. Looking forward, allow me to repeat a little of what I've already said. In summary, protect, include, invest, accelerate. That includes enabling voluntary and safe migration, migration as a choice, harnessing human mobility itself as a positive force for adaptation, and enabling the communities who are most affected already, including refugees, as Ayu has so powerfully shown us in her words today. They are leading the way. If only we will listen and invest in their capacities as key to sustainable solutions of benefit both to displaced populations, to their hosts, and to communities in countries of origin. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. Ms. Helen, if you have...
Yes, thank you so much for your questions. I think as Yona Sharafoko person has said, for me, I think we should develop long-term solutions. Let's not develop solutions based on our political terms. Because if your term in your country ends in 5 years, climate change will not end in the next 5 years. So let's develop long-term solutions that it will work effectively even if your government is not in power. And then to the COP presidents and to Madam Speaker of Azerbaijan, I think we shouldn't come to COP and just sit. As part of the solution that I pledge to put forward today, that every country we go to discuss COP, let's plant a tree. We should leave something in that country because we come and do a lot of destruction. We use plastics. We use a lot of things. So what are we going to leave behind? So let's plant a tree as a support to that country that hosts COP. That is my message. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. So, Ms. Bouabon, if you have anything to say, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to respond the question from the Excellency from the Tonga about how to collect the fund and how to access the fund. Of course, we are the parliamentarian. So our role, our main role is to monitor the implementation of the government, whether it in correspondence with the national plan or not, and also in line with the budget, national budget or not. And for me, I'm from the opposite party. I have to provide some suggestion for our government to do the right thing. And also, as we are the parliamentarian, we can issue the law and regulation to support in order to access the fund in the future. And also, I would like to respond to the question from the Excellency from the Indonesia on the power of the IPU. I cannot answer it on behalf of IPU, but I can answer on behalf as I'm a parliamentarian. I think as we are parliamentarian, we can raise the voice to the world. For me, for example, I'm from the People Party in Thailand. We signed the letter to the world leader to stop the fossil fuel. This is the global campaign named the Parliamentarian for Fossil-Free Fuel. So, as we are parliamentarian, we can raise the voice and make it bigger to the world leader that what we want. I think this is okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This concludes our panel. I would like to thank all our panelists and the audience for their active participation. Two key takeaways, I could say. The one is this issue needs to be high on the agenda of both national parliaments and maybe on the agenda of IPU. Two, it's a strong call to our colleagues in the blue zone, to the intergovernmental negotiators, that there is something that needs to be done for climate finance. Again, thank you very much. This concludes our panel. This session stands adjourned. Thank you.
Dear participants, we have reached the final part of our two-day parliamentary meeting on the occasion of the 29th United Nations Climate Change Conference held in Baku, the capital of the Azerbaijan Republic. The final session of our event, where outcome document will be adopted, will be led by the reporter, Mr. Sultan Mammadov, member of the Milli Majlis of the Republic of Azerbaijan. Mr. Sultan Mammadov, the floor is yours.
Your Excellencies, esteemed speakers of the Parliament, respected members of the Parliament, distinguished guests, Madam President, and respected SG of the IPU, members of the IPU Secretariat, all my colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to be here today with all of you and have a chance to get the floor to brief you about the outcome document that we have drafted from the first date of the decision to hold the IPU meeting in Baku in framework of the COP29. This document is a product of the strong cooperation between parliaments and long and open communication we have managed to establish through the IPU Secretariat. International community expressed their trust to Azerbaijan by granting the right to host the biggest international event as COP29 at this critical time for the future of humanity. The city of Baku opened its arms to welcome everyone participating in this conference. Despite being recognized in the world for its hydrocarbon resources and receiving huge profits from the sale of fossil energy, Azerbaijan has always demonstrated its readiness to contribute to the process of transition to green energy. As a result of the successes achieved, our country has made up a huge leap and ranked to 32nd in the report of the World Economic Forum according to the Energy Transition Index. Azerbaijan is in the list of the leading countries in terms of the share of investment in GDP into the renewable energy sources. The focus of the entire world community today is directed to the city of Baku, where over 70,000 registered members of different country delegations, international organizations, civil society, NGOs, mass media, youth and women organizations, volunteers, eco-activists, members of the parliament, and all those promoting green agenda in every sphere of our life got together to discuss the most emerging issues of humanity as climate change and environmental protection. Azerbaijan is a reliable partner playing pivotal role in Europe's energy security, has successful track record of international events. There is no doubt that COP29 will be the next exemplary successful event for international community. As you know, on May 16 of this year, MOU was signed in Geneva between Milli Majlis of the Republic of Azerbaijan and the IPU regarding the organization of the parliamentary conference within the framework of the COP29. We prepared the draft document for the COP29 parliamentary session based on the final documents of the parliamentary sessions held within the COP27 and COP28, as well as discussions on the draft resolution adopted in the 148th Assembly of the IPU, the agenda of the COP sessions held in recent years. I would like using the chance to reiterate my appreciation to IPU team, to IPU Secretariat, at the same time to reiterate my thanks to my predecessor, Madam Mrs. Mira, for valuable guidance from the first day of my journey to come out with the document presented today to you. After the initial version of the document was ready, we received proposals and comments from various countries. I would also like to take the opportunity to express my gratitude to my colleagues from the UK, from Russian Federation, China, Romania, Austria, Saudi Arabia, Japan, and other countries. In June, we discussed the draft document again at the COP29 preparatory meeting of the IPU. The draft was again sent to our colleagues by the Secretariat of the IPU. New suggestions and ideas were presented. We successfully engaged in highly productive discussions during the 149th session of the IPU. Kindly consider the project submitted to you as a result of our collaborative efforts. We have made every effort to take into account all ideas, comments, and feedback to the greatest extent possible. Of course, I don't claim that we have created the ideal project. I can only say that we have tried to reconcile all the proposals, even contradictory ones. The document, as we all know, is not binding. The provisions reflected in the document are only recommendations reflecting the views of parliamentarians. I hope we have managed to present the project that fully or partially reflects the position of all our colleagues. You will probably agree that achieving a document that completely reflects the views of every member of the organization is nearly impossible. I can only assure you that we have tried to work in accordance with the general goals of COP29 and our responsibilities. I have drafted in my speech a description of the all paragraphs, which I have already presented to respected members of the Parliament, IPUs, during the number of the platforms. And I don't want to go through and to repeat and to reiterate what I have already presented online and at the same time during the meeting. I just would like to underline that the document covers nearly every issues, every concerns, every amendments, every challenges raised today, yesterday and today by our respected members of parliament. And at the same time, what I would like to add, so we had very extensive and very productive offline meetings during these 2 days. And as you know, the reason we decided to have this 2 days meeting, one of the reasons to hold this 2 days visit, with the support of our parliament and at the same time with the support of the IPU Secretariat, was to have a chance to have the side meetings, offline meetings with the respective members of parliament, and to discuss any additional requests, comments, or proposals. So based, Your Excellency, based on what I had discussed already with my colleagues, I would like to apply to IPU Secretariat to record some of the technical change or additions while I am making this presentation, so that after this meeting, with your consensus, we will put some additional points to the final outcome document which presented to you. So I will start with the general paragraph number 8. And in this document, we refer to the challenges we face in the climate change, at the same time required investment to address main challenges in order to come to reach our targets of net zero emission by 2050, with the focus to the United Nations report indicating the need of the investment of the annual 300 billion per year by 2030 and 500 billion USD a year by 2050. At the same time, during the discussion with our colleagues, we received the update that there is a new report from the independent high-level expert group on climate finance, which was printed just 3 days ago, which provides new updated figures. And our agreement with the IPU, and I hope I will get your consensus, your agreement, that we will work through the COP29 with IPU Secretariat and with the professionals to consider this new data, and in case of the decision made, if there is a justification, we will make some slight change, updating figures indicated in the general paragraph number 8. So I hope if there is no objection, so we will get your consensus and move to the second paragraph. Operational paragraph number 1. So here we agreed to make some small technical changes, changing the names, changing the spaces of the mitigation and adaptation, when mitigation will come first and adaptation second. I'm sure that this is a technical change which I don't expect to have an objection and expect your agreement. Operational paragraph number 2. And here, considering some of the proposals from my colleagues from different countries regarding transition to the green energy, transitioning away from the fossil energy, and at the same time, some targets to achieve the net zero goals by 2050 based on the NDCs, we decided to make some additions to the document which you received yesterday evening. So I will just quote, to accelerate effort to transition towards clean energy system through gradual transition from fossil fuels and inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. The second addition was achieve the net zero goals by 2050 in accordance with the NDCs and scientific evidence. So this document reflected all the requests, comments, amendments with our colleagues, and which we agreed with IPU Secretariat and brought to your attention. So I am applying to everyone to come to consensus to agree with this, but if any objections, I will be more than happy to hear. Operational paragraph number 4, we are based on the international experience, so and based on the amendments, recommendations, and comments from my respected colleagues during the IPU assembly in Geneva. So we have here the paragraph about our call to parliamentarians to actively participate in the international platform to prevent the consequences of conflicts, wars, and military clashes that severely impacting the environment and ecological balance. So our call is to change the urge to call upon, because based on the authorities that our parliament has over the government and based on the international experience, so we keep this paragraph with the call upon to parliamentarians. Operational paragraph 21, which talks about the international financial institutions collaboration with the governments in order to invest money in order to for the developing countries. We agreed with our colleagues in order to increase responsibility to increase the responsibility of the international financial institutions in front of the parliament. We propose to revise the paragraph in the following form. Call upon international financial institutions to consult with the parliamentarians in designing region and country-based climate-related programs, enhance collaboration with developing countries in exchanging knowledge and experience on climate finance, preparing climate investment plans, promoting climate investment, and attracting global climate finance through global green funds. Our addition to this paragraph just to include that financial institutions should consult with the parliamentarians in designing region and country-based climate-related programs. I very much expect your consensus on this additional change in the paragraph. And I would like to underline some important points which we discussed with our respected members of parliament about the new technologies and artificial intelligence and their role in fighting climate change. And our agreement was that in future we have to work on this, to assess this, and documents of the next COP meeting should include not only transfer of the new technologies, but at the same time exploration and implementation of the role of the new technologies and artificial intelligence. And at the same time, the document which you received yesterday reflected some of the amendments and requests from country members to encourage not only developed countries, but also other countries to provide support on the voluntary basis to fight with the climate change. And the rest of I would like to use the chance to thank all panelists, all moderators, which discussed a number of the issues, and I would like to underline, to confirm that it's commendable that food security, following COP28 document implementation, natural disasters, ecocide, mines, private sector role, youth and capacity building, education issues on the climate change are all those issues which raised during the 2 days part of the document which we presented to you. I would like to underline once more that this is not a legally binding document, but at the same time, this is the awareness of the parliaments about the challenges which we discuss and about the proposals how to address these issues. I would like to thank also those who raised a number of the issues during the last IPU meeting in Geneva, where IPU Secretariat proposed a paragraph about the health and climate-related paragraph, which is already in the document. So the final document which presented to you with a minor change which I presented here reflects, I'm sure, all the challenges we discussed, and I hope that during the COP30 we will be able to add new issues, our proposals regarding the climate change, environmental protection, and action plan. So I thank you very much for your time, for your attention, and very much open to discuss, and hope that the document which will be, we will approve and will lead us as the parliamentarians to work with our respective parliaments to make sure that all the paragraphs raised indicated here will be implemented in the country level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mamadov. And dear participants, I have the honor to invite Mr. Martin Chungong, Secretary General of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, to present his closing remarks. Mr. Martin Chungong, the floor is yours.
Right Honorable Speaker of the Milli Majlis of the Republic of Azerbaijan, Madam Saiba Gafarova, Right Honorable IPU President and Speaker of the Tanzanian Parliament, Dr. Tulia Axon, the Right Honorable Speakers of Parliament present here. I would like to recognize all of you, as well as the distinguished members of Parliament here present at this late hour. I would like to greet all of you and say how privileged and honored I am to be able to deliver these closing remarks at an event that is memorable. For the first time, we are holding a parliamentary meeting over 2 days. It used to be just 1 day or half a day, but in view of the commitment and importance that you attach to the issue of climate change, climate crisis, we have addressed your concern to give you more time to deliberate on this important matter. I hope that we've been able to give you satisfaction, although I do know, judging from the interest that was expressed in this room, that if we had included a third day, we would have no paucity of speakers taking the floor. But every good thing has to come to an end. And so I want to thank all of you for participating in this event. And let me use this opportunity to reiterate my thanks and the thanks of my colleagues to Her Excellency, the Speaker of the Milli Majlis of Azerbaijan, for having graciously accepted to host this very important meeting in collaboration with the IPU. We do appreciate this commitment to the efforts and activities of the IPU. And I believe that this meeting will go down in history as one of the most well-attended of the parliamentary meetings that we have been organizing throughout. I would also, with your permission, Madam Speaker, extend my heartfelt thanks and the thanks of my colleagues to Dr. Sultan Mamadov. He has been working, I do know, strenuously over the past several months with his office and the office of the IPU to come up with an outcome that reflects your collective sense of what it is that parliaments need to do to step up efforts in combating the climate crisis. We have heard that a summary of that outcome document, and as he himself has said, this is a reflection of a very extensive consultative process in order to capture the views of as many parliamentarians as possible. And it is in this way that we can create a sense of ownership and commitment on your part to follow through with the recommendations of the outcome document. So this document, in a way, reflects a roadmap of what parliaments need to do. It outlines clear and actionable parliamentary commitments, your commitments. The document symbolizes the strength of unity. I think we have been all united during this past 2 days in our commitment to work to contribute to global efforts to stem the speed of climate change. I did say that this was a well-attended parliamentary meeting. We did record some 300 participants taking the time to come here to Baku to have this discussion here. And I think this is just a reflection of the responsibility that we all feel worldwide to confront climate change with urgency. And I use the word urgency by design. I believe your strong presence here reflects a commitment to take decisive action before it is too late. For the second time in a row, this meeting took place in the green zone of the COP process. It used to be that this meeting took place off-site somewhere in a remote location and nobody took note. But now we have brought this meeting into the center of the deliberations of COP. And I think that this is thanks to the commitment of the Azerbaijan authorities and Madam Speaker, yourself. I think this is very important that we continue to drive home the point that parliaments and parliamentarians are essential if we want to succeed in defeating the climate crisis. And we hope that in the future, it will be possible for parliaments to have a seat, a formal seat, at the table where negotiations are taking place, so that the voice of the people can be heard loud and clear in these deliberative processes. So we would like parliaments to remain collaborative, evidence-driven, and unwavering in their leadership in this worthwhile campaign to fight climate change. As we conclude this meeting, we find ourselves confronting an all too familiar message. As I said, urgency, the urgency of action for climate change to recede. We need to take measures now and not wait for tomorrow. Over the past 2 days, we have reflected on the reality that despite years of warnings, commitments, and efforts, the gap in implementing the Paris Agreement remains wide. As I speak, I am reminded of the comments made by the refugee participant in the previous session here. She launched a clarion and sobering call for action to all of us. And I remember her words, let me paraphrase. She said, the time is for action, more action, and less discussion. We have been discussing climate change over several decades now, and it is important for us to be resolute in taking action. And that is why we think that the outcome document reflects your commitment as the parliamentary community to take action in order to contribute effectively to the global campaign against this. And I think that the urgency of the action is not something that is new. As I just said, we have been discussing this over the years, and it is important that we realize that climate change is not waiting. And I think that's what that refugee representative was saying. While we are discussing here, climate change is continuing its inexorable march towards destruction, towards disaster, and we need to do something about that. And we see this in all aspects of life. She did refer to the disappearance of her supermarket. Her supermarket, when she was growing up, was a forest where she would go and harvest vegetables and other food stuff. Now, she lives in a refugee camp with no forest around, no supermarket. And so this is the symbol of what climate change is doing to all of us. And we can also see, and there's evidence, that climate change is driving food and nutrition insecurity worldwide. And this in turn affects health, livelihoods, and ultimately people's and communities' ability to survive and thrive. Integrating nutrition then into climate policies and nationally determined contributions is essential to ensure resilient populations. I would like at this stage also to mention something that came up frequently during this discussion, the emergence of new technologies, especially artificial intelligence. In a previous session this morning, we did hear of the risks that come with the phenomenon of artificial intelligence. But we also heard about the benefits, the potential benefits of the artificial intelligence. So I believe, if you agree, we should include in our outcome document reference to the need for parliaments to make efforts to minimize the risks of artificial intelligence and maximize the advantages and benefits of artificial intelligence, especially in efforts to stem the climate crisis. I think this would be consistent with the IPU's recent policies and guidelines on the emergence of artificial intelligence. And throughout our meetings, we have heard how parliamentarians must not only advocate for ambitious climate commitments, but also ensure that they translate into measurable, impactful results. We cannot afford for these commitments to remain on paper or on your phones, because I think we're moving towards a paperless society, and lots of these commitments can be found on our mobile phones here. So we want Parliament to drive accountability. We would like parliaments to drive accountability. This is something that was referred to time and again during the discussions, ensuring that our governments take decisive steps towards their climate goals. Our unity and collaboration are essential to sustaining global climate efforts, regardless of shifting global priorities. The IPU's 10 actions for stronger national climate commitments offers a roadmap for this, complemented by a new toolkit that we have just launched that offers targeted guidance on overseeing national climate commitments in mitigation, adaptation, and finance. Together, these resources will help ensure our climate commitments lead to real, lasting change. Over the past 2 days, we have heard many compelling examples of the power of parliamentary leadership in climate action. These actions show the impact that parliaments can have and must have. Yet, as we look ahead, we should recognize that much work remains to be done. Let us build on this momentum, together bridging the gap between ambition and reality, making a lasting impact in the fight against climate change. The IPU stands resolute in its commitment to supporting parliaments in this endeavor, and that is our roadmap from this meeting. We do assume that all parliaments are able and capable to implement or to help implement the commitments entered into by their governments. But we are lucid in understanding that there are many parliaments that are struggling. They need capacity building, they need knowledge, they need skills that would allow them to take resolute action. And so we would like to continue to provide the resources that we can to parliaments to ensure that they do their work. And through our campaign, the Planet campaign, parliaments can carry out different initiatives, and we will continue to offer resources and foster inter-parliamentary dialogue. Somebody did talk about inter-parliamentary dialogue this afternoon to equip parliaments with the tools they need for climate action. The IPU will prioritize creating spaces for debate, collaboration, and knowledge exchange, as demonstrated during this meeting. And I encourage each and every one of us to carry this spirit of cooperation back to our respective countries. As we adopt the outcome document of this meeting, I encourage all of us to take its insights and proposed actions back to our countries. Let Baku be a milestone in our collective climate journey, a turning point that strengthens our collective resolve and enhances our actions towards fulfilling the goals of the Paris Agreement. In conclusion, I would like to once again thank all of you for your participation, dedication, and invaluable contributions. My colleagues and I have taken good note of your concerns and interests, and will endeavor to see how we can help you implement those ambitions that you have expressed here. Let us carry forward the spirit of cooperation and determination from these 2 days to drive global climate action. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not a presiding officer, and I cannot of my own bring down the gavel on these deliberations. Only presiding officers can do so. And so I'd like to ask authority from our 2 presiding officers here, the Speaker of the Milli Majlis of Azerbaijan and the IPU President. I would like to seek the authorities to formally close this meeting on their behalf. So do I have that authority, Madam President, Madam Speaker? Yes, I see that they give me that authority. So on their behalf, both of them, I now formally declare these deliberations closed, and we look forward to seeing you next year in Brazil.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. And dear participants, this concludes our 2-day parliamentary meeting on the occasion of the 29th United Nations Climate Change Conference organized jointly by the Inter-Parliamentary Union and the Milli Majlis of the Republic of Azerbaijan. Our meeting was very productive, and we believe that it will lead to real results in the fight against climate change and global warming. A huge thank to all participants to their contribution in this meeting. See you all at the next meetings.